Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, September 19th, 9 a.m. Eastern. This is our monthly, once a month, open house where we give an example of what we at The Chart Guys do with our trading community and our live streams. This is one of 3 live streams we do throughout the day. And we're going to go over the broader market. We're going to check in on individual names a bit after the market open. I'm going to be interacting with Chart Guys members in our chat room, asking for ticker requests and going over some of those. But let's get right into it. We're going to check in on the broader market. We have essentially a battle for an hourly uptrend, and the burden is on bulls. So Friday, we had a big bear day on quad witching. Yesterday, we had a weak bounce attempt, and here pre-market, we're pretty much set to open right about where we closed on many things. And we know that the bulls have to prove to us that they are regaining any control. And to do so, we need to hold the low of yesterday and break the high of yesterday to confirm an hourly uptrend on SPY and QQQ. So the simple statement is, if we do not break the highs of yesterday, the bulls don't prove anything and the bears remain comfortable. As we know, the FOMC is tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. And just to talk a little bit about that, generally speaking, recently, we've had some consensus of what is expected to come out of the Fed as far as a decision. So we don't get a ton of volatility at 2 p.m. Eastern. We get the volatility at 2:30 p.m. Eastern when there is the conference and Powell starts talking about, potential future expectations. So, the market is trying to get any clues from his comments as to whether we're going to see, a pause of rate hikes for a while or are more coming. And so we can anticipate volatility will be a bit higher 2:30 into the close. And then, as I always say, it's really Thursday and Friday where we look for the meaningful reactions, where big money is going to have more time to act. And we are at a spot where we have just set weekly lower highs on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. And so the bears are going to try and follow through with that. One more factor to do with that is similar to yesterday. On the days leading up to the FOMC, there is not a ton of volatility. The market pretty much waits for the FOMC. That doesn't mean there's not opportunity. Yesterday, in the first 90 minutes, there was nice volatility in NVDA and Tesla. We'll look at those names in just a moment. But we can say that, generally after the morning rush, midday, things do slow down a bit. The NASDAQ traded within a 0.2% range for 3 hours yesterday. So it's the kind of day where, if you're looking for a trade, it's in the first 90 minutes or so. And then once you get to 11 a.m., that's when we start being extra patient and extra picky, knowing that pretty much that's the mindset of the market, generally speaking, until we get to the FOMC. So for me personally, I'm pretty limited in my trading. Yesterday I took one trade attempt and stopped out break even, and going to be very picky leading up to the FOMC. So SPY is looking at the low of yesterday. A little bit of weakness here pre-market. We had some housing data come out, but 442.56, the low of yesterday, is in play first thing. And if we break that level, the bears affirm their control as far as saying, nope, the hourly downtrend is still intact, and that's just a failure to confirm an hourly uptrend. And so we're watching that SPY low of yesterday, and for QQQ, that level is down at 369.03. So again, that level is in play as well. So the first question we're going to have here on the open in 26 minutes is, can the bulls hold the low of yesterday? If the answer is no, bear confidence continues. If we do hold the low of yesterday, it's possible we tighten up a bit because we are now a decent bit under the high of yesterday. It's a fairly tight, small range, but again, just keeping the mindset that we just started weekly consolidation. The burden is on bulls to prove to us that they are retaking control. And if we don't break the highs of yesterday, that doesn't happen. The dollar daily consolidation is still an uptrend as long as 104.42 holds. So we're going to keep an eye on this daily uptrend as our guide. We know the dollar is going to react to the FOMC tomorrow, and we're either going to head into weekly consolidation if it's a bearish reaction, or keep this extremely strong 9-week bull move going if it is a bullish reaction. So again, just keeping a close eye on the daily uptrend. One thing that has stood out to us over the past couple of days is the relative strength in the metals. Again, still swimming against the current. That is the dollar, but some relative strength. Gold breaking the high of last week. So when I look at a setup like this, I can say, okay, gold, the weekly high or low is set. I'm on board with that, but there's an asterisk next to it for me because you can set a weekly high or low with just a move straight off consolidation lows, or you can set a weekly high or low with a clearly confirmed uptrend. And I am more trusting of the clearly confirmed uptrend version. So I can say gold, yes, the weekly high or low is set, but we don't have a daily uptrend yet. And so that asterisk is almost like a reminder to me, like, okay, good start. We have space for a daily high or low next consolidation, but just reminding myself that we still have to see those bulls prove it. And so if I am a gold bull or a silver bull, I'm looking at the next consolidation. Again, keeping in mind the FOMC is going to see a significant reaction in the dollar and the metals. But I'm looking at a daily high or low next consolidation, and a bull's mindset is going to be, this is either the weekly high or low or I'm wrong. And that would be a stop level to play off of. And we then have to see the daily high or low and confirm that daily uptrend to try and confirm the weekly uptrend. And we have not been in a weekly uptrend in gold since we topped out at the all-time high triple top back 4 months ago. So we are patiently watching to see if the bulls can follow through. And silver is the same thing. Silver, a nice bounce off the lows. We must confirm the daily uptrend. If we do so, the weekly equilibrium that's been tightening up at this point for 3 months will continue to do so. Again, same deal. The weekly support held into a weekly bounce, but there's an asterisk because we have to confirm the daily uptrend to have confidence that that weekly support level can follow through with the bounce. And then we'll be watching the silver weekly equilibrium, which will likely play out into at least a good bit of October. And the miners are showing us relative strength for the first time in a long time. And so the miners GDX, they're going to test $30 resistance, and they're trying to confirm the weekly uptrend. So GDX is on the verge here of getting to the getting to the highest level that we've seen in over a month, almost 6 weeks if 30 breaks. And so go look at gold and silver. What would we have to do to say the same thing? The highest price in 6 weeks, we got to break the weekly resistance. So the miners are much closer to breaking weekly resistance than gold and silver. And usually that would be a result of the broader market being strong. But, we look at SPY and say, okay, well, SPY has been pulling back over the last couple of days. So it's just some relative strength in the miners that is definitely getting my attention a bit. Oil continues to grind up, just absolute bull euphoria at this point. Daily stair-step pattern with a higher low every single day, now 7 days in a row. Yes, the RSI is overbought, but the bulls have been ignoring that for quite some time now. And again, if we want to just keep it simple, it's the 4-hour uptrend. We've pretty much been riding 4-hour EMA 12 support for the last week of trading. So that can be a guide. And we can adopt the mindset. Bulls have complete control as long as 4-hour EMA 12 is support. If we lose that for the first time, then we can say, all right, things are shifting a bit and daily consolidation is likely underway. But we are seeing this October oil futures contract now just 2% away from the highest level that we've seen ever. So 95.40 key resistance, just over 2% away. And 4-hour uptrend clear guide. Inventory report tomorrow. And with that, again, as I mentioned yesterday, the energy sector is definitely benefiting from the oil strength, but it is also weaker. The energy sector has been battling around, 92, 93 for the last week plus, while oil has just continued higher. So if I am going to be looking at an oil top, I personally am going to be watching the energy sector to potentially lead the way down as it has slowed on its bull climb. And this is also with the energy sector at all-time highs adjusted for dividends. So this is an area where, you would think the bulls would have a bit of an easier time seeing some follow-through, but they've been stuck in the mud a bit over the last week. Natural gas. So we got the equilibrium that we've been keeping an eye out for with this tightening range, and the bulls are heading back up to resistance. So we're looking at a key short-term level of 2823. Daily higher low is now set, and we're either going to break 2823 for a clear break of this equilibrium, or we're going to reject and keep tightening up into the end of this week. And so short-term time frames, now a new support is 271 and we would have to break 271 to remain within this tightening range. But this tells us keep an eye on natural gas because we know tightening ranges break and lead to volume and volatility. And this is the 2-day time frame. And we can see the last time we had not a clear equilibrium, but it was a tightening range that led to a nice spike. And so now we have this tightening range again. And it's almost 3 weeks, 2 weeks of this tightening range. No, I take that back. It's a month of this tightening range. And again, the break is imminent sometime probably this week. And Bitcoin, nice recovery. Bitcoin had a big, ugly upper wick yesterday on the daily candle, and we recovered back to that high, but we did reject. And so I'm viewing Bitcoin, I'm just watching this 4-hour channel at this point as a bit of a visual guide. And I'm considering it a double top at 27.4 thousand. And we currently have a 30-minute equilibrium trying to shape up into the open where we've got our high, low, lower high, and the bulls are trying to hold that support. And so the direction that this 30-minute tightening range breaks on Bitcoin this morning will have some implications for crypto stocks. And one of the setups that I'm watching today, essentially I want to have a couple bull setups if SPY and QQQ hold the low of yesterday and keep control of the morning. And I want to have bear setups if we break the lows of yesterday and bears keep their hourly trends in control. But one of the bear setups is watching our weaker crypto name MARA for an hourly lower high. MARA has closed lower than we have opened 7 days in a row, and it just hit a new multiple month low yesterday. Granted, it looks like bears are tiring a bit, just as each lower low is not getting much follow through, so we have to be cautious of that. But if I look at the hourly for MARA, I could say, well, anything under 1043 is just an hourly lower high. And for me, that's the most likely scenario. And so we have a resistance level pre-market at 1006 that we can be looking at. But essentially, if the Bitcoin tightening range breaks bear, and if QQQ breaks the low of yesterday, that's a setup for MARA to head back towards its low of yesterday at 947. So going to keep an eye on this tightening hourly range on MARA. And again, MARA clearly weaker than Coin and Riot over the last bunch of days. So that's one bear setup that I'm keeping an eye on. Another bear setup that I'm going to be watching for, and then we'll look at a couple bull setups, but it depends on your time frame. So TLRY, talking about cannabis names right now. So TLRY got crushed yesterday. They had a short report, and hourly RSI got down into the teens. And so I'm keeping an eye out for an hourly bounce on TLRY. And there's many setups, and this is where a lot of people, will talk about a chart and argue on social media because you can be looking, at two different things based on time frame. For example, TLRY, if you say, I'm interested in an hourly oversold bounce, I say, okay, that makes sense. The hourly RSI got down into the teens, we're crushed, and we're due for an hourly bounce. But we know the result of that bounce is just going to be an hourly lower high. So it makes perfect sense for a patient bear to be looking for an hourly bounce to eventually short wherever we top out, knowing that anything under 291 is just an hourly lower high. So both can be, if you have two different traders come up to me and say, I'm looking long TLRY, and another one say, I'm looking short, I say okay to both. It makes sense for both. It just depends on the time frames. A bull is going to look for a couple percent bounce playing off the low of yesterday. If I'm looking for that bounce on TLRY, I want to see the bell ring. I want to see a quick push down to 253. I want to see 253 hold, and then bulls get that hourly bounce going. So essentially a quick test of the low of yesterday, and then looking for a bit of short covering once bears, if we don't break that low of yesterday, or if we, break it by a penny with no follow through. So if I'm looking long TLRY, it's on the morning. And if I'm looking bearish, I want to see an hourly bounce. And I want to look for that hourly lower high, maybe midday or early afternoon. So can definitely be watching both directions on TLRY. As far as the other cannabis names, CGC, tightening daily range. Bulls are going to try and hold 104 to keep this daily equilibrium shaping up. ACB has more space for the daily high or low. It is the same equilibrium. So anticipating that we'll probably see these ranges tighten up at least for a couple of days. I don't know if the cannabis sector is going to significantly react to the FOMC or not, but I do love the clarity of ACB and CGC on their daily charts. MSOS trying to set another daily high or low. Bulls would have to break 904 to do so, and it's an hourly equilibrium from yesterday. So lower high at 904, higher low at 857, and just tightening up. And again, the burden is on bulls to prove to us that a new daily high or low is set, and we got to break 904 to do that. But personally, not doing much short-term trading of MSOS while the volume continues to drop off a bit. I'm focusing more on the names that have a lot more dollar volume. For example, MSOS yesterday traded roughly 53 million. Very rough estimation. Whereas TLRY yesterday traded, $125 million. So almost or more than twice as much dollar volume. So that's what I'm looking at for the cannabis sector. Continue tightening ranges. Going to be watching a couple names on the daily charts against setups that are not in play right now, but will be eventually. And so Netflix, similar to TLRY, if someone says, I'm looking long for a Netflix daily bounce, okay, that makes sense to me. I understand. I don't know where my RSI went. I understand why a bull is keeping an eye out for a bounce on Netflix, but we know that the most likely result of the next bounce is a daily lower high. There's tons of space for it to form. So a patient bear wants to see a daily bounce get going on Netflix to establish a new resistance level to be playing off of. And so I'm keeping an eye out on Netflix as bears are tiring a little bit, and we're going to test the low of yesterday first thing. So if 390, 260 holds, or if it breaks with no follow through, then an aggressive bull is going to be watching for a bounce to try and get going off that level. But again, it's only the highest risk, the most aggressive bulls looking for longs on the morning because the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ are not proving anything to bulls. And again, just continued weakness all morning. It would essentially need to be bulls defending the low of yesterday for a short-term oversold bounce because we are at the low right now on some of these names, SPY and QQQ. So we're going to be watching those support tests. And again, if Netflix breaks with no bear follow through, I'd be keeping an eye out for a temporary bottom into a daily bounce. Another name that I'm watching for long entries on, the uranium space is still real strong. We started daily consolidation yesterday on CCJ, and now we are opening right at the high of yesterday. And so bulls are trying to set a quick daily high or low and keep a bull flag in play. There was a lot of euphoria in uranium last week. And one thing that has stood out with the uranium sector is it has done a good job of ignoring what the broader market is doing and being, more of a commodity-based subsector that makes sense. But the bulls have been very resilient, and URA is the ETF, and it's doing the same thing. We're going to be opening right at the high of yesterday, if not above it. And so a really aggressive bull is using the low of yesterday as a stop and saying that's either, our low into continuation of this daily bull flag, or I stop out knowing that bigger picture consolidation is coming. And so that's, it's not the ideal setup. I personally would have wanted to see hourly RSI get to oversold to scout a daily high or low. But the bounce in uranium the second half of yesterday essentially just showing us that the bulls are still very strong at this point. So I personally am not going to be chasing with an entry up here, but I'm going to be watching to see if this daily bull flag does shape up. On a similar thread, LAC is a lithium name, and I'm watching LAC for a daily high or low to be the result of next consolidation. And looks like we're going to test the low of yesterday first thing. So I'm going to watch LAC for hourly oversold conditions. And if we drop down towards 20, we'll be heading towards hourly oversold. And again, the ideal scenario for me oftentimes after a breakout is give me hourly oversold at daily EMA 12 support to scout a daily high or low. And so I'm watching LAC for that potential setup today if the bears control the morning and bring us towards hourly oversold conditions. As far as another bear name, Tesla had a relatively weaker day yesterday and a weak hourly bounce. And so here's Tesla on the verge of confirming an hourly bear flag. Clear resistance at 268.64. We topped out there multiple times. And if we break 263.76, daily consolidation will continue. And at that point, 260.61 is the next support before a little gap fill. And so keeping an eye out. Again, you can be bearish Tesla because of the clear hourly downtrend, or you can be looking for a Tesla daily higher low, anything above 243, because there's a lot of space for that daily higher low to still form at this point. So it all depends on the time frame of your trade. But for now, that weak bounce yesterday is leading to a low of yesterday's support test first thing, which looks like it's becoming the case for more and more individual names as we continue to see a little bit of weakness here pre-market. As far as the bigger picture for the broader market, if we're going to see the NASDAQ, I talked about this a bit yesterday, but if we're going to see the NASDAQ confirm a weekly downtrend, what we have to see is Apple break weekly support that the bulls are defending. Apple stood out for its strength yesterday. Looking pre-market, we're still a good bit above the low of yesterday. So we would have to set a new daily lower high and then break weekly support. Google hit 52-week highs yesterday. Google has to weaken, and it's trying to do so pre-market. I'm watching essentially if the NASDAQ's going to have a chance at breaking weekly support, this Google chart needs to be a daily rising wedge, which is possible. Bears would love to break 136. We got 3 lows the last 3 days just above 136. And so if 136 breaks, it's going to significantly increase the probability that this is a daily rising wedge on Google. And essentially, Google has been the clear strongest NASDAQ tech name over the last couple of weeks. And so what the bears want to see is the strongest names roll over into weakness. And the same thing with the financial sector for the S&P 500. The financial sector is trying a daily bull flag, and we have to see it roll over into weakness if the S&P 500 is going to break weekly support. So essentially, Google is key for the NASDAQ, as is Apple's weekly support, and the financial sector is key for the S&P 500. And so again, I'm just identifying these are the strongest pockets that make up these ETFs, and they will have to weaken if these ETFs are going to confirm weekly downtrends. So Apple's keeping an eye out for a potential daily lower high, anything under 180. Amazon has been weakening a bit the last few days. Amazon has now retraced 50% here. So big bull move up 2 weeks ago, and now we've retraced 50%. Same thing, if the NASDAQ is going to roll over, we've got to see Amazon, who just hit 52-week highs last week as well, we've got to see it weaken. And the Amazon bears will need to confirm a daily downtrend if they're going to take over it all. But for now, similar to Tesla, Amazon has a lot of space for a daily higher low to form. So keeping an eye out for that as we head into the FOMC. NVDA. So NVDA has had relative weakness for a while, but yesterday we gapped down and pretty much got to extremes to shift that a bit into this bounce. And so a key level on NVDA first thing is the low of afternoon consolidation yesterday. And I always like nice, simple statements. And so I look at NVDA, and my statement is, if 436.88 support holds through the morning, the bulls keep absolute full control on this bounce. We have to break that level if we're going to retrace it all into further hourly consolidation. So if 436.88 holds, it's an hourly bull flag. And so that support's in play. And obviously, there's still relative strength here. QQQ is testing the low of yesterday, and NVDA is nowhere near that low. And so NVDA is another name where we are in a daily downtrend, and we'll keep an eye out to see if we just set a daily lower high as the result of this bounce. But it has stood out to us the shift from relative weakness, and then yesterday was the first day of relative strength in a while. And it's almost like NVDA and Tesla took turns switching, because Tesla had relative strength all last week, and yesterday was its first day of relative weakness in a while. And NVDA had all relative weakness last week, and yesterday was its first day of relative strength. So just keeping an eye out on that little short-term shift between those two tickers versus what they've been doing recently. Meta is another name I'm keeping an eye on for a potential 4-hour head and shoulders. So it all starts on the longer-term time frames. In my opinion, what's the most likely scenario here? It's a weekly lower high. And technically, that's already been set, but only by $1. We broke the low of last week by $1. And so if we're going to follow through on a weekly lower high, we've got to see a potential 4-hour head and shoulders here. And we know the FOMC reaction is likely going to need to be bearish if that's going to follow through. But at least for today, watching to see if we fail the high of yesterday at 303.60, that's going to be forming the potential right shoulder here. And if we then drop down and break the low of yesterday, this 4-hour head and shoulders will confirm into further weekly consolidation. So keeping an eye out for Meta. But again, with the current setup, I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be the FOMC reaction that dictates whether this pattern confirms or not. So we'll keep an eye on Meta lower high as a result of the current bounce. It's just a question of, is 303.60 the lower high? And a bear that wants a real close by stop level is going to use that. Or, keeping in mind that we could still break 303.60 and then follow through with that pattern later post FOMC. But personally, I always like to have a nice clear level nearby that I'm going off of. And so that's why, I'm keeping an eye out as Netflix tests its low of yesterday first thing, and TLRY. Again, I want to see TLRY drop on the open to, 256, 255 if I'm going to get a good risk reward long attempt where, if my risk is 2 or 3 pennies and the reward potential is 10 to 15 pennies, that's the kind of position I want to put myself in. So we'll keep an eye out to see if TLRY, if TLRY were to open here, just as an example, if they open at 259, that's too far away from the 253 stop level. I don't like the risk reward there because at that point, my risk would be 7 pennies and my reward would be 10 to 15 pennies. It's a much less favorable risk reward ratio. So I personally always want that stop level nice and close nearby. And so it's the kind of thing where if Netflix, breaks 390, 260, but then sees a bounce right back up to the 394s, at that point, I then say, okay, that's got to be the low of the day or I'm wrong. And if I'm playing a bounce, I've got to go off of that level. But again, the current market environment with the FOMC tomorrow, I'm probably not going to be looking too aggressively bullish, knowing that the bears did just set those weekly lower highs and we're watching for potential follow through from them. So I'm probably going to be a patient bear today, watching for the TLRY hourly lower high eventually, or the MARA hourly lower high. That would have me more comfortable just with where these daily and weekly charts currently stand. So no pressure, putting no pressure on myself to trade the open here. But we are in some short-term oversold conditions. And just like that, an hour and a half ago, we were set to test the high of yesterday first thing on SPY and QQQ. And now here we are with QQQ's small gap down open and SPY testing the low of yesterday first thing. I'm also keeping an eye on my KRE short, hoping that KRE bears break the low of yesterday first thing. And so when SPY and QQQ do bounce next, I'm going to be on the 15-minute time frame fairly quickly, just looking for 15-minute lower highs to be the result of that bounce. So just looking at SPY here, we can see, pretty decent pullback and a lot of space for a 15-minute lower high. So it won't be surprising if we get some short-term bounces with 5 and 15-minute RSI oversold first thing, but we will be keeping an eye out for the potential of a 15-minute lower high to be the result of that bounce, at least initially. All right, logging in and getting ready for the bell to ring here in just a minute. So NVDA key hourly support in the 436s. Again, if that level holds, bulls keep complete control and will be positioned pretty well for a short-term oversold bounce in the indices. That level again is 436. What? 436.88. All right, bring on the open. I'll do ticker requests from TheChartGuys members here in just about 15, 20 minutes or so once we get an initial little A little bit of info and data from the open. So Netflix broke the low of yesterday, first thing. Keeping an eye out for follow through or not. QQQ breaking the low of yesterday. SPY still right at its low. And so I would consider Netflix as a bear break with zero follow through at the moment. TLRY is heading down to 253, so key short-term support test there. And again, a lot of space for short-term lower highs to be set on the 15-minute time frames next bounce for SPY and QQQ. But it is full bear control initially here. Again, Netflix is disregarding it. Netflix is flat while QQQ is still dropping here. NVDA broke that hourly little support level, so still well above the low of yesterday, but not quite the ideal open for the bulls there. KRE just tested the low of yesterday and held it, so we do have a double bottom there initially. Bulls playing a little defense. TLRY is currently holding the low of yesterday by a penny. Need a new high of the day over 260 for a convincing hold. So aggressive bulls trying to bottom fish there. And aggressive Netflix bulls need a new high of the day to continue to see a little bit of relative strength. CCJ uranium over the high of yesterday, so keeping that daily bull flag shaping up. Tesla quickly turning things around. So Tesla had a quick drop under the low of yesterday by 70 cents. V-shape back to the high. Resistance on Tesla is going to be 268.64, the bounce high from yesterday on that hourly bear flag. But similar to Tesla and Netflix, they broke their low of yesterday just barely and then quickly got back to their high of the day. And so both of those names are positioned well if the NASDAQ can also get back to the high of the day to try and get a bounce going. And there are a couple of the first green names on my screen. Apple is also just barely green. Netflix resistance is going to be pretty much anything under 397.71 would be an hourly lower high. Financial sector still showing strength. Again, that KRE double bottom, not good for my short. KRE resistance approaching 42.90. But I'm going to let that swing trade play out with my stop at just above 44 as I got a pretty good entry around that level. So QQQ still needs to get back to the high of the day if these names that bear broke with zero follow through are going to get some bull follow through. TLRY trying to climb back to its high of the day as well. Again, it's a double bottom with the low of yesterday. Aggressive bulls wanting to get, risk-free as soon as they can. So if we break 260 here, an aggressive bull could sell, maybe a third of their position and stick their stop under 253. So then try and let the bounce play out further, but then have very low risk. Netflix, nice follow through along with Tesla. Now that QQQ is back to the high of the day, we know QQQ is going to have to confirm a 5-minute uptrend for the bulls to prove anything to us. So still a long road ahead to shift short-term momentum. But again, it's the names that broke with no follow-through that are standing out. TLRY got back to the high of the day. So nice follow-through there. TLRY resistance. Again, tons of space for the hourly lower high. We're not going to forget that, which is why bulls want to take some partial profit into the initial bounce. I would consider 280 a resistance level. That's not even close to being in play. Question for a bull playing that bounce is, are you going to sit through next 5-minute consolidation to try and let the bulls shape up a 5-minute uptrend or not? As far as names standing out with relative weakness, it's still Amazon. 3rd day in a row now. Amazon dumped. It's crushed on the RSI. The hourly RSI, 22. The 5-minute is single digits. Next support level, 136.75. Yeah, aggressive bulls are keeping an eye out for an oversold Amazon bounce attempt. Again, same mindset. If you're playing these oversold bounces, you want to be locking in some partial profit as it is playing against momentum. But Amazon is crushed on a lot of time frames. Easily the weakest major NASDAQ name on my screen. Microsoft is the 2nd weakest. ACB bulls for cannabis stocks having a good morning. They're trying to set that daily higher low very quickly. If we get over 975, our new daily higher low is set. So we're just looking for a 5-minute lower high to be the result of this QQQ bounce. We must confirm the 5-minute uptrend if anything is going to shift. At this point, I'll be watching the Amazon 2-minute stair step as a guide on the short term. Lower high every 2-minute candle here. Again, this is not the kind of market environment where I want to scale in to an oversold drop, especially without a clear support level nearby. So I need to patiently wait. If I'm looking to play an Amazon bounce, I need to patiently wait for a level where I can say that's either the low of the day or I'm wrong and use that as a stop. And so that's one of the benefits of a stair step strategy is once the stair step breaks bull, that low at that point is the must hold level. If I'm looking bearish for an hourly lower high on TLRY, I want to see a 5-minute uptrend develop and hold through the morning to then give me a clear guide looking for that 5-minute uptrend to be lost for that hourly lower high to be set. MARA bears out first thing. Low of yesterday back in play, 947, but it did hold initially. Checking back in on Bitcoin. Still in a 30-minute equilibrium for Bitcoin, so that may tighten up for another couple of hours. Definitely need to pay attention to that Bitcoin tightening range if you're trading these crypto stocks. MSOS is back to test the low of yesterday, so no daily higher lows shaping up at this point. Key short-term support test there. XLF still up at the high of the day. Again, this daily bull flag for XLF is still absolutely in play. Resistance 34.90 in play today to try and confirm it. That would definitely be a win for the S&P 500 bulls. Check back in on the Amazon 2-minute. So 2-minute stair step did break bull at 137.85. Bulls need to see a move, ideally all the way up to 2-minute EMA 12 if they're going to create space for an eventual 2-minute trend change to try and take place. So low of the day is a must hold at this point for that 2-minute stair step to try and play out. TLRY, quick pullback. Again, gotta take some profit. We'll see if the bulls are able to shape up the 5-minute uptrend. Selling that partial position gets you in full control of the trade, where there's nothing better where a worst case scenario is a break-even stop out. QQQ, more significant bounce here. Netflix back to the high of the day. And it's Amazon helping a bit after certainly being a drag on the NASDAQ the first 10 minutes. Still definitely not a confident bounce in Amazon yet, though. So every new high of the day that we see for QQQ here increases the probabilities that we can shape up a 5-minute uptrend. But we're going to continue reminding ourselves that that's on the bulls to prove to us that they are gaining that control. Got to confirm that 5-minute uptrend. Overall, the bears are happy with the morning, at least in the sense that QQQ broke the low of yesterday. SPY, however, going to consider it pretty much a double bottom. We broke by 17 cents. But again, on the hourly charts the last 2 days following the big bear day Friday, bears haven't had anything to worry about. These are weak bounce attempts at this point. Meta is getting back over the high of yesterday. So Meta's standing out for some relative strength. Again, we're going to keep an eye on that 4-hour head and shoulders, but the right shoulder is not being set yet. The left shoulder was 309. I don't like that the pattern is pretty much dependent on the FOMC reaction. It may still play out, but not ideal where the pattern needs that. Tesla topping out on its bounce. So again, 5-minute trend changes needed. Big move initially, giving back half of it. Must form a 5-minute higher low and high of the day. Otherwise, the bears are going to keep control of the longer term trends. High of the day topped out just under that resistance zone you could see from yesterday. Bears were just camped out in the 268s, and the high of today got right up towards that zone. Tesla was a 1-minute stair step that marked the high of the day there. Amazon still weak. Got to confirm a 1-minute uptrend if this oversold bounce is going to see any follow through. Bears very confident in Amazon as long as 1 minute EMA 12 remains resistance. MSOS broke the low of yesterday. We're heading down towards daily support 808 as TLRY gave it back right back to the low of the day as well. Microsoft has seen a pretty nice recovery from its low. Still will need the 5-minute uptrend, but hourly resistance 329.32 coming into play. QQQ back to the high. So still no 5-minute lower high set there. We'll check in on the volume here in 15 minutes or so to compare the first 30 minutes of volume just to see if it is a low volume day to keep us on the more patient side. Posting a ticker request thread for TheChartGuys members. Someone asking if ENPH has news. The first thing that I do is after looking at the chart and saying, you know, is there something unusual going on? It's some decent volume. And then I go to Twitter. There was a director buy. Director disclosed the purchase of over 4 million in stock. I see that was a headline 38 minutes ago. So it looks like that is... Nope, I take that back. That was overnight. But that is the headline on social media that is currently dominating ENPH. So QQQ 5-minute lower high set. We would now need to hold the low of the day and break the high of the day if we're going to confirm a 5-minute uptrend. And you can see both Tesla and Netflix, that initial strength, that initial pop, giving a lot of it back. Still possible they confirm 5-minute uptrends, but again, just a constant reminder when you're playing bounces like this that are against the trend, you got to take partial profit. MARA is still testing support. ARM recent IPO as that Tesla 2-minute stair step failed. So if I were playing that Amazon bounce long, I just said Tesla, I think I'm in Amazon. If I were playing that Amazon 2-minute bounce long, the long entry is 137.85. Stop goes under the low of the day. And the ideal is to bounce enough to sell partial to then be risk-free, but we didn't get a big enough bounce to get to that risk-free point. So it would have just been a stop out with a risk of about 45 cents or so. This Amazon drop is one of the more significant short-term drops we've seen in a long time. And we certainly now at this point have a lot of space for a daily lower high to be the result of the next bounce on Amazon. And so that's going to be the goal for the bears to end September, will be to confirm the daily downtrend. Starting to shape up like a potential head and shoulders, but no sign of a bounce at this point. So ARM testing the all-time low. If 55 breaks, there is no support. Black dirt breakdown. I would need to see the bulls break the high of today, 56.78, to have confidence in a double bottom there. But if 55 breaks, considering there's no price history, we're just looking at psychological levels the whole way down, 54, 53, etc. And we are just hovering right above that support, certainly still testing it. MRNA, significant bull move out of the gate. Increasing bull volume on the 5-minute stands out. We know we have to confirm the 5-minute uptrend, but we certainly have a lot of space for a 5-minute high or low next consolidation, watching the retracement size to see if it remains healthy. As far as the daily perspective, big drop yesterday and then a gap down temporary bottom today. So we need a 5-minute uptrend, and then eventually we're going to need an hourly uptrend if anything's going to shift bigger picture. But bulls certainly liking the response to the gap down open first thing. So a question about Amazon. Can I talk about the psychology of if you're looking long and got stopped out, now what? How do you think about it? Because it's counter momentum, counter short-term trends, I will only give myself one attempt there. You know, if I give myself an attempt and I position myself break even and I stop out break even, then I'll open up the door where I can give it another attempt later on down the line just because I haven't lost. But again, what I want to limit is playing counter short-term momentum multiple times. I'll do it once, and if I stop out and if I take, a half-day loser, the last thing I want to do is rack up a day loser that then puts me in timeout for the day, no more trading, with, two trades against momentum. That's not how I want to start my morning at all. So if I had attempted that 2-minute stair step, I would be done attempting an Amazon bounce for the day. The last thing I want to do is build up a streak of losses and build up loss momentum. And we certainly want to build up win momentum. And so it's our discipline of choosing when we trade and when we go in timeout and when we're done for the day that breaks that up. The analogy that I always give is, when you're playing basketball, if the other team goes on an 8-0 run, a 10-0 run, and, they steal the ball and they get a fast break and slam dunk and the crowd's pumped up and you're losing momentum, you call a timeout and you break that momentum in any way that you can. And so our timeout is, I'm done trading for the day. I'm not going to keep that lost momentum going. I'm going to come back tomorrow with a fresh, clean slate and break that momentum. So the last thing I want to do is get a number of losing trades in a row. MSTR. Very tight here and testing support. 336.36 and 336. Essentially a double bottom. And you can see since then, it looks like a descending triangle where we've got a base of support and then just lower highs. And a descending triangle is a bearish pattern. And so we're on the verge of support here. And if we break 336, the bears are going to affirm their complete control. Bitcoin 30-minute. Lower high is potentially set. Let's see if the bears are able to break this tightening range in their favor. MARA is still testing that low of yesterday. Held it by a penny initially. And again, MSTR. We can look at it on the hourly perspective and draw a horizontal line at the base of support. And again, just those clear lower highs, which is what a descending triangle pattern is. ARM IPO price 51, synthetic support. Thanks for that heads up. If you got nothing else nearby, 51 definitely something to keep an eye on. So QQQ, no 5-minute uptrend. Bears keeping their complete control. So high of today is now a short-term resistance level, new low of the day. And both Tesla and Netflix giving back a lot of that little morning pump as the NASDAQ bulls were unable to follow through with the 5-minute uptrend. So bears remaining confident. And again, the NASDAQ clearly weaker than the S&P 500 because right now, healthcare sector is at the high of the day and the financial sector is near its high of the day. And so it is clearly the NASDAQ names that are weakest on the morning, led down by Amazon. Cannabis stocks have had a significant turnaround. CGC was up. CGC is down 10% from the high of the day. ACB is down 8%, 9% from the high of the day. And TLRY is back to testing the low of yesterday. So this is the scenario where I'd be stopping out. If I took that Tesla bounce first thing, sell partial, I'd be stopping out break even. Let's say, in at 264, out half at 266, stop at 262, break even, and that would have gotten me there. That's, if I'm playing counter momentum, that's how I do it. But again, I'm not liking the long side today just because the bears have the weekly lower high in their favor, and I'm being picky with the FOMC tomorrow. At this point, on the bear side, TLRY might be giving us a real quick hourly lower high. So I can be looking bearish on a 5-minute lower high for TLRY versus the high of today. Some of these names are now giving us resistance levels from today to be going off of. Netflix still holding on pretty well, all things considered. It is a potential 5-minute bull flag while QQQ hits a fresh low, but we know if QQQ keeps dropping, that's definitely going to hinder the Netflix bull's abilities. I may keep an eye out for a Meta 5-minute lower high next bounce. Again, the key for me is just having levels nearby to be playing off of. MARA trying to hit fresh lows. 947 did break. So we know MARA is looking for a 15-minute lower high next bounce. And what the bears would love to see here is the financial sector roll over and hit a new low of the day. KRE is back to testing its low of the day. Still want to see KRE break 42.40. Ideally 42.11, but we'll take it one level at a time. So now that we've got just about 30 minutes of trading, I can compare volume. So SPY first 30 minutes yesterday, and I know yesterday was a low volume day, was 4.5 million, and today is just a wee bit under that, 4.3. QQQ yesterday was 4.8 million. Today it's 4 million, so it's almost 20% less volume today versus yesterday. And yesterday was 25% under the 20-day average. So again, it's definitely still seeing the low volume heading into the FOMC. But bears are liking the start, keeping their full control. Let's look at the daily charts here, because what's QQQ and SPY are now doing is QQQ has broken the low of the last 2 weeks, so it's a more convincing weekly lower high. And SPY still needs to break 441.19 to do that, but it's coming into play. Again, it's the financial sector is holding up SPY a bit. Bears would love to see the financial sector weaken. We would need to fail 34.90 and break 34.52 for that to happen. Checking in on Apple. Apple's trying to hold the low of the day. If we do, we'll look for a 5-minute equilibrium there. CCJ back in the red. So I'm going to remain a bit patient on these uranium names. Still certainly strong overall. Amazon still a 5-minute stair-step drop all morning. Let's check back in on Google. That daily support at 136. Still holding, currently an inside bar. XLF low of the day test, 34.76. QQQ bears now getting a significant amount of follow through. There's a lot of space for a 5-minute lower high next bounce. So the NASDAQ bears, ideal morning. It's just a question of, do these other sectors roll over and join to try and get the S&P 500 ugly? MARA bears following through. I'm assuming Bitcoin broke bear, and it did. You can see the Bitcoin tightening range following through significantly, and that's leading to MARA. All bears from the open. And fresh multiple month lows. So MARA is going to remain a lead bear as long as we keep closing lower than we open, trying for 8 days in a row now. And again, with Bitcoin, there's a 4-hour channel to be keeping an eye on for a potential bounce attempt. Not in play just yet, but it's approaching. KRE, another support test, as XLF is testing the low of the day. Again, one thing we haven't seen is all major sectors at the lows at the same time in a while. Bears would love to see that shape up today. It's a possibility. XLV would need to drop a bit. Netflix still ignoring the NASDAQ drop the last 20 minutes. A little tightening 2-minute range on Netflix. Looking at low. So covered low on a short as 4-hour RSI is crushed. What's the psychology of looking for the 4-hour lower high to re-enter versus sitting through the bounce? Well, it depends on your strategy. For example, if it's a hands-on trade, then there's nothing wrong with taking profit into some extremes and then looking to reload. For example, my Tesla swing position is more hands-off. And what I mean by that is I don't want to have to think about it at all. I'm thinking about my day trades on a daily basis. I'm not thinking about my swing trades. And so I know that position is going to drop in value during daily consolidation. But I also know that I've sat through 2 periods of consolidation that have led to more profit because I have done that. And so it depends on, number one, the time frame for your trade. I entered Tesla for the possibility of a monthly higher low being a result of daily oversold conditions, and that ended up being what shaped up. So if you're in low, for a monthly setup, you're not really worried about the hourly and 4-hour RSI too much. So there are often times where, as a swing trader, I will be, and one of the things I've been working on is not over trading those swing trades. Get in the position and then let it play out. And there's definitely something to be said with that. Because if you're trying to micromanage, if I were trying to avoid every period of Tesla daily consolidation, I probably would have gotten out of my position and not gotten back in and missed one of the legs up. So you need to determine, there's nothing wrong with the swing trade being hands-on and there's nothing wrong with the swing trade being hands-off, but you want to try and set that in advance as far as what your intentions for that trade are. So low looks like a daily, if we start a daily bounce from here, low's got a real nice megaphone. But then we'll be looking for the daily lower high to be the result of that bounce, which is essentially what you're hoping for as far as taking profit on your short and then looking to reload it. So there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on the time frame for your trade and your intentions for that trade. KRE bear break, so new low, good sign for bear swing. 42.11 is the next support level that I want to see break. XLF hit a new low of the day, and XLV is approaching the low. So SPY weakening a bit. Netflix still standing out. 2-minute equilibrium on Netflix, little tightening range here. So viewing this as the high of the day, low of consolidation, lower high, higher low, and we might do that for a bit. But certainly compared to the rest of the NASDAQ, holding on well comparatively. Netflix has had relative weakness for a week plus, and it's trying to shift that today. And the sign of, breaking support with no follow-through is a sign of bear exhaustion. LAC. So as I mentioned, I'm watching LAC for a daily higher low. And I'm watching for hourly oversold conditions. And here we are. So if I'm looking to play this, what I'm looking for is an entry soon. I might give it a shot. So the setup is, again, wanting to find a level where we start the hourly oversold bounce from, and we know if this is going to remain a strong daily uptrend, this needs to mark the daily higher low. And again, what I don't like is that the FOMC is going to be a significant factor in that, but this would be the kind of setup where we need hourly oversold conditions to lead into an hourly bounce and then set up an hourly trend change to bulls to mark that daily higher low. And in this moment, we have short-term RSI levels really beat up with the hourly being oversold, which is what I like to see if I'm looking to play a bounce. And so I'm going to keep an eye here. I'm not going to rush into an entry just yet, as 1 minute EMA 12 has been knocking the price down all morning, which is a sign of a lot of bear strength, but keeping an eye out for an entry here sooner rather than later to play that hourly oversold bounce. And again, my strategy, my style is, let's just say I'm in at 1950 and I put a stop at 1930 and I sell half at 1980. Then my break even, I can just stick a stop at 1920 and say that's either, the start of the hourly oversold bounce and a daily high or low, or I stop out break even. And that obviously requires that when I make my entry, we see that short-term bounce playing out. So that's why I'm going to be a little bit patient here, because it doesn't look like we have a low of the day set yet at this point. QQQ 5-minute bounce still pretty weak at this point. Looks like Netflix broke that tightening range. Bearish, perhaps? Nope, still within it. But we did get that lower high. Should have left those lines up. It's trying to play out. So got to keep an eye on LAC. So if I do long LAC, I'll let you know. But if I do, I'm going to put my stop at 1929 to give a little bit of wiggle room under the low of the day. And again, the goal will be to sell partial into a short-term bounce to try and lower my cost basis. So we're going to watch our bounce retracement size on QQQ. Certainly still a potential bear flag at this point. Looks like Amazon is getting a little bit of relief. Still a very weak bounce there as well. All right, I'm along LAC. Put my stop at 1929 and see if we can get an hourly oversold bounce going. Target would be Netflix did break bear from the tightening range. So now Netflix on the 15-minute time frame, watching to see if bulls are able to defend the low of the day, but obviously NASDAQ weakness. That's an example of Netflix swimming against the current, and eventually the current didn't shift, and so it dragged down Netflix with it. The NASDAQ will eventually be looking for a 15-minute oversold bounce, but again, we got a lot of space for lower highs on a lot of time frames. And for LAC, a target here for me would be for a partial sell, I'd be looking at, let's see, If we were to go right up to 5-minute EMA 12, I would take a little bit off there. Maybe a third. So that would be maybe 1975 or so. NVDA not doing a whole lot today. It's an inside bar and wouldn't be surprised for it to remain an inside bar just because we're way above the low. But we're also now a couple percent below that high. And again, you can tell it's definitely a slow morning. One of the ways when I'm looking at this fidelity screen is every time there's a flash, there's an order going through. And when it's a high volume morning, it's going flash, 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 flash. All these boxes are flashing. And now it's flash, flash, flash. It's just very slow. It's pretty easy to tell just visually with this screen when it's a lower volume morning versus a high volume morning. QQQ trying to shape up the 5-minute bear flag. If we confirm it with no follow through, we would look for a 15-minute oversold bounce to try and get going. But again, this is just bears not having a thing to worry about as we are fairly close to all major sectors hitting lows together. Something I'm going to keep an eye on for the rest of the day. QQQ just held the low, trying to get a little bit more bounce follow through. Why am I not aggressively selling LAC? Because it's a play for a 1 hour oversold bounce. And the 5 and 15-minute RSI are crushed. So again, we don't want to be micromanaging things. If I'm playing for a weekly setup, I got to let the weekly play out. If I'm playing for the hourly setup, I got to let the hourly play out. Can't be micromanaging the 2-minute time frame if the play is based on the hourly chart. IONQ, quantum computing name that sold off pretty hard recently. Daily stair step, lots of space for a daily lower high. We're in a downtrend on the shorter term time frames. Currently a 15-minute oversold bounce, 50% retracement. So if we fail the high of the day, it's a lower high. Bulls then need to confirm a 15-minute uptrend to get an hourly bounce going. Then we zoom out, we watch the hourly top out. We then need to confirm the hourly uptrend to zoom out and look for the daily bounce. So again, it's the zoom out game, one time frame at a time. And I like the clarity of the 15-minute right now. So if the bulls are going to do anything, we have to confirm a 15-minute uptrend to get an hourly bounce going. If we do not see a new high of the day, the bears keep complete control. And we know a 15-minute lower high is more likely than not as a result of this initial bounce. So QQQ, let's measure this 5-minute bounce retracement to see what's the most likely scenario from here. We know the 15-minute RSI is crushed. That's now cooling off. The 5-minute bounce retracement is still just 382. The bulls need to get 50% plus to be creating the space for an eventual 5-minute trend change attempt. So bulls do still have more follow through to go if a 5-minute trend change is going to be on the table. Meta still holding on as a lead bull, much closer to its high of the day than most individual names. If we fail, Meta will have a nice 5-minute equilibrium to be watching through the rest of the morning. Low of the day, high of the day, higher low, maybe a lower high forming. So the mindset for today is definitely burden on bulls, because after Friday and yesterday, the bears are still very comfortable in the short term. TLRY broke the low of yesterday with a couple pennies of follow through, but it's now all about our trends. You know, the bulls couldn't confirm a 5-minute uptrend after that initial bounce. So until bulls confirm a 5-minute uptrend, bears don't have anything to worry about. Amazon still a potential 5-minute bear flag. Decent bounce on Tesla. Bulls trying to get to the 50% retracement. Again, we're watching for tightening ranges to potentially shape up. If we get 50% plus bounce, we'll look for a lower high compared to the high of the day. Then we'll look to pull back and form a higher low. I often find there's more shorter term equilibriums on lower volume mornings, because by definition, equilibriums are declining volume patterns as ranges tighten up. Definitely would have liked to have seen LAC break 1960 short-term resistance by now. Still struggling to get any kind of bounce going there. KRE still weak near its low, as is XLF. Amazon's definitely going to have to bottom if the Nasdaq's going to see any kind of bounce follow through, just knowing how important Amazon is in terms of weight to QQQ. Here's Amazon testing the low of the day. Check back in on natural gas to see if anything is changing on our daily tightening range. Man, there's the bull break. That's a good sign. 2865 need to break as well. Doesn't have to be today, but the sooner the better as far as keeping conviction. And so bulls just want to maintain an hourly uptrend through today. It would be icing on the cake to break 2865. The last thing the bulls want to do is break the equilibrium straight into daily consolidation. So just hold those short-term uptrends, and if we don't take out that level today, need to take it out tomorrow. And so Boyle is definitely benefiting, although not as much as I would have expected. Boyle's not over 59.36, the high of last Thursday. I'm sure it's trading based off of different factors than just the forward-looking futures contract. But it's technically still not in a daily uptrend unless we break 59.36. So QQQ is trying to creep towards 50% bounce retracement to try and shape up an eventual 5-minute uptrend. Still work to do there. Tesla's got a 5-minute stair step. We had a 5-minute stair step drop. Now a 5-minute. Well, I take that back. There was a 2-penny bear break there, but pretty much a 5-minute stair step on the way back up. So again, anticipating Tesla is likely to give us a tightening 5-minute range until late morning, early afternoon. Meta is testing its high of the day. So from here, as we wrap up, it's going to be all about, can the NASDAQ bulls confirm a 5-minute uptrend? And if we do, we zoom out, and we know that anything under the high of yesterday is just an hourly lower high. So even if we do see some short-term bounce follow through, bears do still have control of that hourly trend. XLF key support from here. After failing the bull flag initially, we would need to break 34.52 for a significant shift in momentum on that daily chart. So we'll be watching that level today and into tomorrow. Amazon is still all bears. New resistance level is now 137.01. Again, the NASDAQ bulls are going to really struggle as long as Amazon continues this free fall. QQQ 5-minute lower high set. So we would have to hold the low of the day and break 368.43 to change anything. Otherwise, the bears just keep full control of the 5-minute downtrend. Meta failed the high of the day, so 5-minute lower high set there as well. 5-minute equilibrium. Tesla 5-minute lower high set as well. We'll see if bulls can hold the low of the day and tighten up. All right, appreciate you all tuning in. Thanks for the likes and shares and all that fun stuff. I'm headed back to the Chart Guys chat room, and we'll see you later on down the line. Have a good rest of your day.